One of my teachers said, you saw me as a teacher, but you also know me as a person. And I do this valuable job every day. And this is who I am, at my core. And so I think that, again, that relationship connection piece that we keep going back to is really the foundation of getting all of the other good work done.
You're listening to the NAESP Principal Podcast, where school leaders connect around real challenges, real experiences, and real growth. In today's episode, new school veteran principal leading with trust from day one, Principal Andy Jacks talks with leaders Jessica Quinter and Kenny Newby about what it takes to enter a new school as an experienced principal. From building trust fast to aligning with supervisors and protecting your own well-being, this conversation offers practical strategies you can put to work right away. Let's get started.
Hey everybody, this is Andy Jacks, principal at Ellis Elementary School in Manassas, Virginia, and senior fellow at the NAESP Centers for Advancing Leadership, and you are on the NAESP Principal Podcast. Whoop, whoop, whoop. That's how we roll. All right, so today I'm super excited to be talking about veteran principals coming into new schools, right? And so I have two amazing leaders here. Also on the NAESP board, we have Jessica Quinter, the principal of Park Forest Elementary School in State College, Pennsylvania. And we also have Kenny Newby, principal of Justice Allen Page Elementary School in Maplewood, Minnesota. Welcome to the episode, to the show.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
So, we have a list of questions we're going to run through a little bit, but as we were talking beforehand, this is just like our jobs can be all over the place at times. And coming in as a veteran principal, this is my first year. I just finished a first year this is my third school as a principal. So how many principalships have you guys had?
I'm currently my second principalship. So my first principalship, I had also taught in that building and had been in that district for a total of about 20 years before making the shift to a brand new district, which was significantly bigger and a very different system from the one that I had previously been in.
All right.
Yeah, and for me, I just transitioned to a new school this past school year. And before that, I was in 3 different districts. So I've had, 5 different roles within 4 different districts as an AP in one of those roles and the principal in 4 different schools.
Yeah. So my first, we talked about this ahead of time, but I'm reflecting on this journey as much as I'm asking questions. And I feel like, especially now the third time around, I learned hard lessons that I'm trying not to repeat, in tough ways. And so what's maybe an overarching theme that you're seeing between schools that is probably a trend in all the schools, maybe needs or wants or...
Sure. I think first and foremost, and we as building leaders talk about this all the time, but it's really that taking the time to really build relationships. We know that if people don't trust us as leaders, they won't come to us with questions or concerns. We also want to be able to just really be responsive to the school and the school culture. I think for me, in shifting from one district to another, one part that was important was to kind of have these moments of humility. Like, I do know, I have experience as being a principal. I've been an educator for many years, but I haven't done it in this school or in this district. And really just kind of taking the time to listen and learn from everyone, I think kind of put me farther ahead. Just really kind of acknowledging the system and the culture and kind of like that community of the school, and then thinking about how I can be responsive within that was pretty beneficial in terms of taking those first steps in a new building.
Yeah, I would echo some of those same things that Jess is saying. I think one of the things I've noticed in all the schools that I worked in, and it's true in this brand new school I started last year, is connections matter. People need to feel connected. Yeah. So that whether that's staff, your families, your students, people need to feel those connections. And that was something that, going into the school this past year, that actually we as a leadership team set that as our goal, that every connection matters. And that was a great way to introduce myself to a new school and get to know everyone else. I'd echo one other thing Jess said too, is just being vulnerable and being open and letting the the more schools I've been at now, and in my experience as leadership, the earlier I knew it was important to just be myself as early as possible in my position, because as soon as people saw me as a real person, as a real leader, those connections really had a big impact on our work relationship moving forward and that trust that we built. So that's been really important to me.
Yeah, I think you guys are spot on. I think for me, you can have so many obligations and responsibilities as a school principal, and you feel like you have to achieve these things. But if you don't get the people on board, you can't do anything. And I know for me, especially my third go around, that was the number one thing that I had to do. And fortunately we did it, but we're still working on it. But if you can't get the people, you can't do anything. You can't achieve your goals. Your continuous improvement plan doesn't matter. All of those things don't matter if you can't get the people on board. And really that's just creating those relationships. So maybe let's dive into that for a second. When you went into this last spot, how did you talk about being vulnerable, Kenny, but was there a specific strategy used, or did you just share your journey, your story, who you are, that kind of thing? Or are you very specifically trying to have events or activities along those lines?
Well, for me, I made connections with staff first, just because, you start in the summertime, and just open up opportunities for staff to come in and do some one-on-one meetings or grade level team meetings. Met the leadership team that was in place at the time. But even with that, just, the true introduction of my background, who I am as a person, both professionally and personally, and just, just letting them get to know me as a person. Yeah. But taking that time to initially meet with individuals, and then after the school year started, doing that same thing with support staff, making sure that you take time to get those people connected as well, because they do a lot of the work in their schools that right. We often, if we're not intentional about that time, it won't happen. And something that was really challenging for me this year is I came from a school with about 340 students to a school with 850, so a much larger system. Right. And so I had to be really mindful of what that looks like, because everyone wants some of your time, and we, time is very precious, and so just being intentional planning to make those connections and giving people some time. Mm-hmm.
Sure. And I was fortunate in that whenever I made my transition, I was able to go meet the staff at the school on one of their last days of the prior school year. So I knew that I was going to be making that transition over the summer, and was able to just kind of do that initial introduction, which I think was really helpful. And then over the summer as well, and just initial communications, had set up times that anyone in the building could come to meet with me. And I really kind of left that open, as if you want to do it as your grade level team, if you want to do it individually, whatever you want that to look like. We can do it at school, we can do it at a coffee shop, and just trying really to create a comfortable environment for everyone to come meet me, and for me to start to get to know them as well. And it really had a lot of people take advantage of that. I think as in my building where I am currently, they had several turnovers in terms of leadership, and everyone was really, curious about who is this next leader going to be? What is she like? Is she going to stay? What will her priorities be? Well, we need to shift everything all over again. And I think kind of going back to just really being authentic and vulnerable is just really important for the people that you work with to know, who you are, not only in terms of who I am at school, but then also kind of personally looking at what that piece is as well. Just so I was pretty intentional about some of the pieces that I shared with staff and faculty at the beginning of the school year, and just being, pretty specific about that. Things like this is how I grew up. This is who my family is. This is what this looks like. One example that I gave was I'm the oldest in my family. I'm a big sister to two younger brothers, and gave the example of and then that means that I'm really protective of people, and people are really protective of me. And so it just really kind of taking those individual pieces down to, a very personal level, and being just really honest and open, just in developing those relationships before we can talk anything about, the school improvement plan or data or what the schedule looks like or any of those pieces.
Yeah, I'm going to dive back into a couple of those things. One is, for me, I was very intentional with having principal listening sessions. Mm-hmm. So I actually had a booking thing that I could do where they could actually sign up whenever they were free. So this is all summer, even when they're off contract. So I was really intentional of having those. And then first when I got all staff back about getting with as much as possible, getting these team meetings, having these sessions, but really something that, and this is maybe advice out there, you can listen without hearing, right? Like I felt like there was times where in the past, I would do this, but I would just do it at face value to like say I did it. And I'm just being vulnerable in this podcast here. I don't care. But this time I was extremely intentional to like be present, be in the moment, like actually learn about who they are as a person. What do they want? I mean, something as simple as like, we're the explorers, and, it could be anything for the explorers. And, our mascot's like the space shuttle, but there's a lot of different exploring, like, frontiersmen and all sorts of things. But what people were saying is they like the astronaut. Like the astronaut kept coming up. So it's like, all right, I'm hearing, right? So, and I love branding, I love design and all that, but you got to listen to what they're saying. And once I kept hearing that over and over, I'm like, okay, that's probably a safe bet to go down that path. And then even when I did start making changes, I was very intentional again about bringing it back to them real quick before I made the final decision. Like, what do you think about this? What do you think about this? Or have them have input with actually creating it. That was a big deal for me. But definitely, and then one piece too, and before I get to the next thing is, and maybe this is a question for you too, is like how your boss plays into it. Like, and I was very fortunate. Mine, she said right away, because I'm in a very similar position as you. We had 8 principals in 9 years at my school. In a lot of ways, kind of a tough situation. But she said, just get the culture, just get the people. And as much as you don't think you need that kind of direction as a veteran, I think you really do need that kind of direction, because you feel all this pressure to get scores or to get whatever, achieve goals. But the reality is, if you can't get the people, like you said, you have nothing. So when she said that to me, even though I knew I wanted to do that, it was a kind of, it freed up the pressure I felt. And that's my question to you guys too, is like, people don't realize that when you come in as a veteran principal, they think like, oh, it's so easy in a lot of ways. In a lot of ways, it's hard because there's a lot of expectation on you to either change things around, all that kind of thing. So coming to that situation as a veteran, how are you thinking about the change process? Some has to do with scores, or it could have to do with specific areas of need or growth that had to be developed. That you can't do everything right away, right? So what were your thoughts coming in on that?
Well, I'll play a little bit into what you said about the difference between listening and hearing, and going back to the building the culture. So the building that I joined this year was a unique opportunity in the fact that it was a school that had only been in operation for 2 years. So pretty brand new school community that had been a combination of 2 elementary schools in the same district being closed and merging together in one school, which I really appreciated when I had some of these conversations with the leadership team and teachers about, what are some of our challenges. And I kept hearing this over and over. Well, we feel like we're still 2 teams in one building. And we had a unique opportunity when this school was created, and with the way our teacher contract is and how teachers can bid into positions, we ended up with grade levels that represented schools. So they bid into positions so that they could come together as a team, because that, they were comfortable with that, which makes sense because change can be hard. So I just kept hearing this over and over, that we are one school, but kind of still feel like we're 2 staffs. And so, and a challenge with that was that the principal for the first 2 years had been a principal at one of the buildings that closed down. So, and she worked very hard trying to break that barrier down with the 2 staffs. But I think it was just really challenging. I can see why. So that came to me as something that it was a common theme. And I really knew we have to be transparent about the work that we're going to do with this. And when I was having those meetings and hearing these things, I think a lot of the trust that I built quickly was because when I made decisions, I was just transparent about, this is what I'm hearing. This is why this isn't working. And this is what we're going to do, because we need to break this down, or we need to come together as one team. So I think I gained a lot of trust in that. They saw right away that I heard something, we made action steps based on what I heard, and then we moved forward. And I think they really appreciated it because they felt heard in those conversations. And that was really a big piece of, creating that culture that we're coming together as one team, and came back to our theme that we had said that all these connections matter. We need to keep making connections with other teams at other grade levels and break down those barriers that were there. And it's made a big impact, I feel.
Jessica, you're next in a second but you said something, Kenny, about what I think is like a trust cycle, which is if you say you're going to do something, you do it, that builds trust. If you say you're going to do something, you don't do it, that's going to break down trust. It's also if they ask you for something and you follow through with it, that will build trust, and vice versa, right? So being very careful, but also again intentional at following through is a big deal. And I know in the past, I have to be careful about is like the over-promising, under-delivering. Is you can come in as a new, as experienced principal, like, oh, we can do all these things, blah, blah, blah. Well, you can't. That's another piece of advice I have is don't say things like that. Just, listen more, talk less, the typical,
Yes.
Right.
which, as we're doing a podcast, but it's a serious challenge because you do have all these things in your mind about what you want to do. Right. I don't know if that was something coming in, Jessica, for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, to that point, one of the pieces that was interesting for me was I had come from a very small rural district that I was really familiar with, had been there for a significant amount of time, and I was the only elementary principal. So if there were things that needed to happen in terms of curriculum or professional development, I was the one that was in charge of that, and I could kind of work with our superintendent or our cabinet level to just sort of make that happen. And moving into this new district, I am now one of 8 elementary principals with a very different structure in terms of cabinet and directors. And so that part of it of, yes, I'm hearing you, and yes, I feel like that's a change that we need to make. And I also need to figure out how that works within this system. And it might take longer than I anticipated to. We might have some other hurdles that we're not sure about. So just being, again, just really honest and transparent about all of that piece. I learned early on from the staff members in my building that they really appreciate context. And so if I'm able to say, I heard this, these were the concerns that I took, or how about this idea? How do we want to do this? And then how can I come back to share? I had this conversation with this person. I tried to find this resource. I'm trying to get approval to do whatever. And it just really being able to provide some context for decisions was helpful. I was also too, in the beginning, just kind of thinking about some pieces that I did at the beginning of establishing relationships with everyone. Was also pretty upfront about, I have experience, but not necessarily in this district. And I hope that you will find that I will interact in a genuine way. I hope you find me to be kind. I, am going to ask in advance for, your patience and to give me some grace as I'm just trying to figure out all of this. And I think that coming in with that approach instead of, I've been doing this for a long time and I know all of these things, which obviously is, not the case. I'm learning still every single day. I think that went a long way to kind of developing those relationships and that environment of trust as we try to change and improve together, right? Everyone wants what's best for our kids and our schools.
As a veteran leader entering a new school, trust is built through listening, visible action, and balance. Here are 3 NAESP member principals sharing what matters most.
And I said, do not allow this job to take over your entire life. And it has taken me nearly 20 years to figure that out because it can. You have to set very clear boundaries for what you are willing to give up, what sacrifices you are willing to make. And it can quickly become your life. But when you have a family, they deserve you and all of you when it is their time.
That what we do matters, but the hardest part is that it matters every day.
Your job is to build relationships. Your job is to make connections with kids and staff. And your job is just to love others. And everything else will kind of pour out of that and overflow out of that heart for leadership.
Every principal feels the pressure of entering a new school community. That's why NAESP offers a growing library of tools and resources on culture, change leadership, and principal well-being to help you start strong. You can explore these anytime by visiting NAESP.org and searching for leadership transitions or school culture in the Resource Hub. Now, back to the conversation with Dr. Andy Jacks and his guests.
I think for me too, without diving into scenarios, situations, I think in one case when I did that, I did feel internal pressure. Like I felt a lot of pressure to to make the right changes and to make them quick and to make it like better, faster kind of thing. And then in this go around, I just took that pressure off myself and just literally just let go of a lot more, even though I'm still working really hard. And man, did that make a big difference on just like my own connections that I can make with people, because I realized how much pressure I was putting on myself that just didn't exist. Like people really weren't doing that to me. I did it to myself. And what I realized is I was just sabotaging myself, and because if you're trying to make a change that people don't want, I mean, if you have to do it, like, if you have to do a new curriculum or new something where you just have to do it, then there's a way to even do that, right? Just to tell people like, guys, we got to do this. We're in it together. We'll figure it out. But when it's other things, systematic organizational things, I'm very intentional now about, what do you think? How should we do this? I don't know. Or here's a couple different ways. What do you think about this? Or let's form a committee. Or a lot of times now, like we did this like a assembly thing I wanted to do this kind of fun thing, but I knew if I just like made people do it, it wouldn't go over well. So this time around, I just said, hey, I have an idea. What do you think? Are you interested? You can say no. And in this case, they were like, let's do it. Let's go. I'm in if you're in, kind of thing. But if I was trying to be honest with them about it, if you say no, I'm not going to do it. Because, you can't go back on your word if you say, it's okay if you don't do it, but then like hold a grudge against them, Mm-hmm. So are there like specific things that like maybe moments or stories or scenarios where you either it did work or didn't quite work? I know I'm putting you on the spot. Because when you think about it, as you think about this, when you think about like, for me, one of the things I try to really look at is one thing I also try doing is making sure that, despite people wanting change, I guess that's one thing, right? I find that whenever you're a veteran principal coming in, people like want things to change, but you still can't do it all. What you want and what you need are two different things. Yeah. And it's like people would say, let's do this. We want this. We want this. We want this. You have to be careful to don't do all that. Right? Kind of really figure out what do we need to do right now? What's that going to look like? And who's going to do it? And we had one case where we had a teacher that gave up. She's our math Title I. She turned into our math coach. Jess, she's amazing. She gave up her office, which is like prime location for a CLT room. And she said, you know what? I'm going to give you this. I'll go upstairs somewhere else because because we were talking about different spots for like a collaborative learning team meeting space. It's like prime real estate in our building. And I didn't make her do it. But when she gave that up, I was really clear about like telling everyone, like, that's the kind of school we have. That's the kind of people we have sacrificing for the greater good. Not in a way that I expected other people to do it, but just to really immediately highlight like good things happening, like momentum. So to me, like that's a story of like an early triumph where I was trying to really recognize people, which then to me is now like a really big theme I'm trying to make sure I do.
One thing that came to mind is just trying to make things efficient in a really large school with just even flow of traffic, of body traffic. And so one thing I really appreciate about my school is that we did not have an efficient way to release kids at the end of the day. And so we had a model that, we started the year off like many schools do with teachers walking all their kids out just because you need to get in those routines, especially with the little ones. And we weren't getting it done in the time frame that we needed to get the buses released. So we just had open conversations throughout the year, like what's working, what's not, what can we continue to change? And teachers had great ideas. And so we ended up with a system that most people, well, I would say all people thought, hey, this is working really well with, let's get creative with why aren't we using some technology and why are we on the intercom releasing all these kids when our buses continually to be showing up at different times, which was really challenging. So the system that we had would work if the buses were there all the time, but when the buses aren't there on time, we have to shift. So using some technology and some just making information go live as buses came in, and also coaching some of the teachers at younger grade levels that, a couple months into school, these kids know these routines. We can trust that we don't have to walk them out one at a time. Let's give them, let's set the standard high for them and they'll meet it. And as soon as they were willing to do that and give it a shot, we decreased our dismissal time by like 10 minutes, which was huge when it comes to the end of the day routines. I
love that. So I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit is, what did that meeting look like? Was it one meeting? Was it multiple meetings? Was it like, what did that
Yeah, so we shifted this plan like 3 times throughout the year. So it was always one of the kind of ongoing agenda topics on our leadership team meeting, which we met monthly. Team. So we'd always bring to leadership team as teacher leaders. They'd bring it back to their grade levels and talk about how's this going, what's working well, what's not, what other shifts can we make. And like I said, we made at least 3 big shifts throughout the year. But yeah, it was a continual conversation, which was kind of a way I like to approach a lot of. That's kind of my leadership style too. Is I like to be very collaborative, and having that opportunity at the leadership team meetings throughout the year, it worked well.
Perfect.
I think for me, just thinking early on in terms of the building was, as I had mentioned, there had been some turnover in terms of administration within the building, and teachers had some pieces that they were kind of firmly set in, and some other areas where like it was prime for growth and some different initiatives that we could put in place for that. So whenever I think back, I think of some shifts that we did initially in terms of instruction. And so I had been an elementary teacher, I had been a reading specialist, and knowing, being able to have that experience in terms of how instruction should be provided, what data looks like, all of those pieces were some areas where teachers were craving for more. And so whenever we would have conversations about, I think I need another assessment where I can dig a little bit deeper into what this student needs for reading. What do you know about that? And so really just kind of working alongside teachers. We want some more data so we can figure out how to differentiate some more. What does that look like? And so being able to kind of establish myself instructionally within the building, I think went a long way. And then also just participating with teachers in that. If there was an after school activity, if there was a summer trade time that was happening, if there was a book study that was happening, I really have tried to, as a leader, model what that looks like to be a continual learner. And I'm not in a classroom every day doing that exact kind of work anymore, but my job as a leader is to make sure that I know what best practices are and I can support teachers whenever they have those questions. So in terms of just kind of thinking about what were some early wins, I think it was that instructional experience that teachers valued that we were able to capitalize on.
Yeah, and I think when we started talking about relationships and all that, right? And core always comes down to relationships, but it's also like when you are first connecting with people, like, how authentic is it? And in a lot of ways, as an experienced principal, you have an opportunity here that's a little bit different. Like, what the big deals are, what you can sort of slide on, what you can't slide on. So you need to use that to your advantage in some ways, just like lower the anxiety from everybody. I think that was something I really tried hard this time, is be enthusiastic and positive, but calm. And I've had a really mission in my job now. I say I want to try to laugh every day. It's a big deal for me. I try to laugh every day, connect with people in that kind of informal way to lower the pressure for people, even though we have a high sense of urgency. We have a lot of things we need to do. And that made a big difference, because I feel like a lot of times too, they have a lot of their own anxieties with you coming in. Right. Like, what are you going to do? Are you going to make their lives worse, better, etc.? And just your affect. And the other one thing I want to think about, and I'm going to ask you guys for some takeaway, some takeaways, must-dos for people. Because I think even though if you're listening to this and you're a new principal, for instance, you're aspiring principal, these are all same things. Just learn from us, because we probably messed up a lot more over the course of our years. You can learn from that. But just the people will talk about you all the time as a leader. You got to get used to that. And it's really hard. One of the things I was really intentional about this time around was not to make them happy, but what will they say after that conversation? Even if it's a tough conversation, how will they describe that conversation? How will they describe me? And I kept that in my mind, because for me, I need that kind of reality check. I need that check on myself to, even if I've got to be tough, or even if I'm fast, or even if it has to be sort of, to the point, I have to be really intentional about okay, was this done in a way that they will leave thinking, okay, at least, he cares, kind of thing. And that to me has made a big difference, because especially when you're new to a building, they all talk about you every single conversation. There is no such thing as a confidential conversation, right? They'll all talk about everything. So to me, how will they talk about you 5 minutes later, an hour later, the next day? That is kind of an internal strategy for me. Do you guys have strategies like that helped maybe?
Well, something that came to mind when you're sharing that is, I think our words really do matter. And so my approach in having conversations with people is we need to be kind to people. Even in tough conversations, we have to be kind. And these are people's lives. So I think one of the biggest compliments I feel I got this year was my assistant principal and I were having staffing conversations when we had to make some budget cuts, and we had to let go of a very veteran intervention teacher because our intervention model was changing. And after that meeting, we had, and had that conversation with her and let her know that, it came back around to us because, like you said, there is no confidential conversations right. That another staff member shared. I just got to tell you, she came up to our intervention space and was talking, and she said, I don't know why, but she said, I felt good after that conversation, and I just lost my job. They did such a nice job of how they told me. And wow. I think that was like, wow, that wow. really makes a big I mean, yeah, because that could have went so different, right? Like right. if she left that meeting and feeling like most people would when you lose your job or you're getting shifted to another building or whatever that might be, knowing that she left that meeting, which was a very difficult conversation to have and very hard news to hear, and she felt that way, I was like, well, that was awesome. That was a great compliment to get.
Good job. That's hard to do on our end too. People don't realize how difficult it is to deliver tough news or make those hard things.
Right, because you care about the people that you work with in the same way that, we put students first. We care about all of the grownups that are in the building as well. I was just kind of thinking about kind of how we create priorities as a staff. And, when something really difficult happens, and whether that's at school or whether it's outside of school, how do we respond in terms of being a community and picking each other up? So one of the priorities that I try to live by and the way that I interact with our school community is like, your family is first. And no matter what happens, if something happens and you need to leave in the middle of the day, if something happens overnight and you find out you can't come in right until the beginning, like right before school starts, or you're going to be late or whatever that is, like it is family first always. And I think that having those priorities and showing that life, education is very important and we do very valuable work. And like, I'm a teacher and I'm a principal and I'm a lot of other things too. And just trying to model and show that balance of being genuinely kind. What does it look like when I can go home and set a boundary that is, I'm not going to be checking my email all night. I'm not going to be responding to texts all night. So just kind of modeling what we want that to look like. And then how do we also, have staff feel that confidence in that if they need to come to us with something that is difficult, that we're also going to respond in a very genuine and sincere way. And I think in talking with teachers, and Kenny and I have both talked about this, and kind of at the end of the year just asked, what are some things that we've done that have gone well? What are some things that maybe you wish you would have changed? And I think one of the pieces that was really impactful for me was one of my teachers said, you saw me as a teacher, but you also know me as a person. And and I do this valuable job every day, and this is who I am, at my core. And so I think that again, that relationship connection piece that we keep going back to is really the foundation of getting all of the other good work done.
Right, and going back to, we started with this is veteran principals coming in. So as much as we think we know some things, you're always learning. And one more takeaway too, I think is. Just because we've done things in the past that have worked doesn't mean A, you need to put those in place, especially right away, or B, that they're going to work again.
Right.
And so my last quick hit at the end here is there anything where, you're thinking like for me, that was a big thing is like, even though I know I could do this thing, I can't. We got to build it together. That building together matters, Any final thoughts on something? Veteran principals coming in. What's your final thoughts?
I don't know if this ties directly to that question, but something I'd like to just share because it can be a big deal to change your profession out. And when you have been in a school building for 8 years and you've done a lot of the hiring, you've built this team, you know these families, it's really hard to leave. But principal burnout's also a real thing. Yeah. And so we have to take care of ourselves. And I'll just say that one of my best years of being a principal was this last year. And it was because I took a chance to try something different. So I just encourage people, like, give it a shot. It's so refreshing. You do get a fresh start. You get to do so many things better because of your experience, and it's so much fun. And I had the other thing I'd say about that too is you have an opportunity after you get some years under your belt to really seek out a school that is a good fit for you. You know, when you're first searching that job, you want that experience, and you take what you get sometimes. But having that opportunity to really seek out a school and a district that matches your personal values and your educational values, it's really fun to know that, hey, you can do that, and you can find a really awesome fit for you, and you can join a really good community that also feels good for you, so that when you are having those really tough times and going through some of those challenging times throughout the year, it's still fun to go to work because I know it's a good school for me to be at.
Right. And I agree with you. I had one of the best years of my career last year, and people would say, you know, are you staying? Are you staying? Kind of thing. And it's like, I keep saying, I'm staying if you're staying. They're like, I'm staying if you're staying. And I'm like, I tell them all the time, you don't understand. We also need to feel good coming into our job. I want every single employee to come to the building and feel great about working in there and just feel positive and meaningful, fulfilled. But I also want to feel that way too. And that's why I tell them, help me feel this way and I'll help you feel this way. What's your thoughts on that?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Absolutely. The, for sure. Right. Like you want that balance to be, like you want a good fit for, for a new school and for yourself professionally as well. And I always think, at multiple times through my career as an administrator, a teacher has come to me and has said, I think maybe I need a shift, and that might be a grade level shift or a position or a department shift, or maybe they're leaving to go to another school. And I always feel like it's my job as a leader to help anyone who comes to me to achieve whatever their goals are as well. And so I'll never hold a grudge about that. Let me help you do that. Can I help write you a letter? Can I connect with someone that you might know? Ultimately all of the kids or all of our kids, whenever we look at education as a whole. I think one of the other ideas that I was coming back to kind of making that transition is just to really be patient. Like we said, we might come in and maybe see some changes that we want to make, and just to acknowledge that might take some time as you learn a new district, a new school community. And then also for me, in terms of making that transition, it was really important for me to lean on my network. And so the principals that I know from being part of the Principals Association in Pennsylvania, from being part of NAESP, and just other colleagues and friends that I've made through the years that I know have also maybe made some changes or have had a transition in their career that has been significant, just really relying on all of those people whenever I had questions or maybe needed that pick me up or, those words of encouragement to keep plugging away. Obviously, as you make that change, and it's really difficult to do. And to also sort of reaffirm your confidence in what you do as a leader.
Right,
and,
do I still got it?
Right. Am I okay? I just made this really big change, and I'm doing but just those people that we all have that that help pick us up.
Yeah. All right, so you heard it on the Principals Podcast. Don't make changes right away unless you absolutely have to. Involve the people on these things. Build relationships and be authentic. What else do we got?
Have fun.
Have fun and relax a little bit, right? Enjoy the ride more. Great feedback. Jessica, thanks. Appreciate you. Kenny, appreciate you. Words of wisdom. Thanks for joining. Thank you.
Thank you.
To explore more leadership supports and communities that help you succeed in new schools, visit NAESP.org and explore the Resource Hub. The NAESP Principal Podcast is produced by the National Association of Elementary School Principals. Learn more about our community and membership at NAESP.org. If you enjoyed this episode, subscribe to the NAESP Principal Podcast and share it with a colleague. Together, we're building stronger schools and stronger leaders.